Found footage is a format that gets relegated to one genre a lot, that being fucking horror, obviously. Ever since the hit of Blair Witch in 1999, everything just kinda went downhill from there. I mean, it makes sense, if you think about it, getting lived into a world via the cameras of the characters, effectively making you feel like you're part of it. It's appealing, and it only works in a sense of horror because it's easy to do. Forget plot structures, forget actually having to build anything up. All you need to do is have a justification for why everything's being recorded and make it scary. Something which is a lot easier said than done, apparently. But despite all this, I still feel it's kind of a shame. Found footage is a generally fucking awesome, just unique format. When it's done right, it's not just there to live you into the world or the horror, it's there to actually make you feel something that you won't feel from other movies. Gives you a unique viewing experience, or uses the format to kind of fit into the world in a creative way. A lot of people do this. Man Bites Dog is one of them, but that's just another example of a horror. My point with it all is that despite being the fucking enemy of any suburban mom over the age of 30 because her nausea kicks in every single time they see the characters do the funny thing, found footage is heavily underrated and also underused in our society. The movie landscape is just so rigid and Hollywood-based, even now, that any movie that tries to break from that format either has to have some miracle story behind it, had to have been a marketing scheme, or just sucks. Which is kind of lame. The last time I saw a found footage movie in general that wasn't VHS was like Troll Hunter, I think. I don't really know. I'm gonna be real, I can't remember. I am a cuck. Hell, if you still don't believe me, look at these two movies. They did something different. In 2012, some geniuses had the idea of mixing teen angst with superpowers and a found footage format. Chronicle was a pretty big hit, not only for the time, but still to now. It's like kind of a cult classic movie that was classic at the time it released. Has a good cast, good story, and just generally uses the format it's fucking using in an interesting and creative way. So what's this? Project Almanac is a movie that lived off of the success of Chronicle and tried to kind of do its own thing while simultaneously buying into the market that they saw was possible with Chronicle, and then it failed heavily. Okay, yeah, this video isn't just gonna be me talking about why I love found footage for 2 hours straight, though that would fucking rock. Instead, I'm gonna look at these two movies which I kind of remember from my teenage years, and look at why one succeeded so magnificently, and why the next one made it so that no fucking found footage sci-fi movie was ever made again. You don't count. Neither do you. I think the best way I can possibly lay this out is just by doing it all simple, like, in the first part we're just gonna talk about Chronicle, and then why it succeeded. We're just gonna look at Chronicle in the first half of this video and look at why it succeeded and why it was remembered. And then we're gonna look at Project Almanac, see what it does, and why it brutally, horrifically bombed harder than fucking Yamcha. Chronicle has a pretty simple story to tell, and it tells it pretty well, too. What happens if 3 teenagers got superpowers and started dicking around? I'm not gonna go through a play-by-play, but the entire idea of the movie is just really good. It follows the 3 of them being these complete, like, stereotypical fucking assholes. You know, you get your introvert, you get your narcissistic dick who keeps talking about philosophy, and then you get your jock. And then as they get their powers and start bonding, you can realize that they're actually more than they seemed. They all kind of have this struggle with coming to terms with their powers, and then eventually when a tragedy strikes, the power goes to one of their heads, which leads to a big climactic fight between the last 2 survivors. It's crazy. If you haven't watched Chronicle, I don't know what you're doing here, to be honest. It's a pretty good movie, you should give it a try. Now, just like I'm not gonna go through a play-by-play of the plot of each of these movies, I'm also not gonna go, like, part for part about what made Chronicle a perfect movie, 9 out of 10 bang star soundtrack, whatever, because I feel like that would take way too long and also have no impact on the overall message of the video. Instead, all I'm gonna do is look at the things that stood out about Chronicle and then try and, you know, chronicle them. You should subscribe, I'm so funny. The immediate standouts of Chronicle have to be the cast and overall the writing. The actual character writing is well done, and the roles are performed quite well. Michael B. Jordan even pulls a fucking heavy bit of the movie's weight. He's like the emotional climax of the entire thing. The growth the characters, go through in the runtime of the movie is genuinely impressive. It feels like it had a message to tell, and it told it well. It's not just a message about friendship, but also about power and how it corrupts human beings. A tale as old as time. A cautionary tale or something, I don't know. And honestly, considering how the movie is structured, it works really well. It doesn't have Act 1, Act 2, Act 3 in a conventional sense, but it also kind of does, if that makes any sense. Most of this movie is just watching these three dumbasses kind of grow closer together, and also just dick around with their superpowers. Like, usually in a movie like this, if it was made by Hollywood, there would be some big montage of how he dicks around with his powers, and then they all dick around with their powers, and I'm making this sound really weird, but instead it's like half the entire movie is just this. It's them throwing, like, shit around, them moving cars and pranking little girls, and why does this sound so weird? What am I doing? The point is, while this would be kind of egregiously overstaying its welcome in any other film, it just fits here. Yeah, they're teenagers. Of course they would film themselves doing dumb shit with their powers. It gives some good comic relief, it lets you gawk at the CGI a little, and it gets some creative work with the camera, Which is another thing this movie does really well. In found footage, it's often hard to justify why the camera is even there, both from a behind-the-scenes standpoint and both from a actual story standpoint. Looking at you, motherfucker. Oftentimes when found footage is chosen, directors get called out for being cheap and lazy, and I mean fair, I guess. Found footage is easy to produce, but Chronicle doesn't treat it like it's some second-to-none filmmaking technique. They use it for what it was made for in every way they could, and it works. Not only is there a reason in movie for the characters to be filming, that being that one of the characters is getting, abused by his father and wants to chronicle it all, holy shit, but also from a behind-the-scenes standpoint, it was something unique. The way to tell this story was through this manner, because it made you feel closer to the characters. If you were just following all of them doing their own thing, it wouldn't have been that amazing. And on top of that, the found footage kind of plays a role in the movie itself. It gets used in a lot of scenes, like when they're flying around, or when Andrew, the main guy who's getting abused, is just like flipping the camera around himself and doing cool shit with it. It uses every advantage that the format possibly could have given it, and does it in a creative way that I don't see many movies do ever. Plural, like, multiple movies fail to have good direction when there is a camera involved. And I know found footage doesn't really seem like the genre or, format where directing is something you can do, but it is. It would just take insanely long to explain how, but there's directing that goes into how the film is shot when it is filmed on a found footage film thing. Trust me, I may be a dumbass, but I think I know what I'm talking about, and that's all you need to know. And on top of using the format creatively, it actually, adds to the themes of the story. Andrew gets this, weird obsession with filming himself and chronicling everything despite not showing anybody anything he's filming. It turns into such an obsession that by the end of the movie, there's this scene where he uses his telekinesis to just rip all these phones from the Seattle Needle, and they make them all, record and float around him and the other guy who are, arguing, and then for a split second, the movie turns into a normal movie as you switch between the cameras floating around them, and it's just that's so fucking cool, man. Not only does that add to the creativity, it adds to the story. That's unique. Ugh. Other than that, the movie was just kind of fun. It had good chemistry between the characters as well, and it sold. If you were a teenager, which I definitely was, it spoke to you in a way that few movies now tend to do. I don't know, being a teen in the 2010s felt different. I yearned for those times. And despite the movie not really costing that much to make, it fucking banged. Like a lot. Chronicle was a critical success for a multitude of reasons. It was something people hadn't seen before, and the theaters were effectively lining up for it, including the fucking suburban moms who got nauseous and had to leave twice in the single sitting. It's one of those movies your dad wouldn't really understand, but you would be like, holy shit, this is so deep, I want to have superpowers and fly around with my friends. And then you never would. And it was an easy movie to market on top of that. It looked good, had good actors, and it was good. Chronicle was good. I would give it an 8 out of 10. I enjoyed it. So how'd you fuck it up? Released in 2015, 3 years after the critical success of Chronicle, Warner Brothers wanted another movie that could kind of profit on this newfound market. And so Project Almanac was born from the bowels of these dudes. It was a time travel story that followed the fucking main character being a nerdy dude who couldn't talk to chicks and had a bunch of nerdy friends, finding a time machine that his dad had built, only not finished, and then he finished it, and then he starts time traveling with his friends to dick around like winning the lottery, and then he does it to chat up a girl, but then the butterfly effect causes the entire time fucking space continuum to collapse. And then when everything collapses, he goes back to see his dad, who died in a car accident. He thinks he can save him, but he can't really save him, so he burns the time machine and it turns into a paradox. Also, they play this song a lot. I can't play the song because the video would get... You know the song. It's like, I know that sounded way more complex, and I mainly did it for the joke, but Project Almanac is kind of a mess of a movie when you have to put it into a easy description. At its core, it follows the same stuff that Chronicle had, though, in a pretty substantial fashion. It is a movie about teenagers who get a lot of power that was kind of gifted to them, and then they duke around with it, and then they learn the important lesson that you should not let power corrupt you. A cautionary tale, if you would. Wait a minute. So, I think there are like 2 main factors we have to talk about for why specifically Project Almanac couldn't live up to the hype of Chronicle. To do that, I'm gonna go into what made the movie kind of work, for me at least, and then what made it very much not work. So, buckle up. Starting with the good, the movie generally did age a little bit better than I remembered it originally, being. The CG looks pretty good, and the actual time travel story is kind of appealing. I mean, hell, it's a bunch of people your age time traveling. That's how I saw it back then, and that's an appealing idea. That's kind of what Chronicle hooked people on. People your age flying and shit. One of these seems a lot cooler than the other, but I mean, I take either at this point, to be honest. The movie also has some good actors, despite not being a star-studded cast, and the chemistry was kind of there in a few moments. They did feel like the actual teenagers you'd see in every American movie, but like, real, like they actually had known each other for some time, talked about stuff, and have their own individuality in extents. Hell, even the hook of the entire time travel thing inevitably falling apart as you get to see David in video footage of his own birthday when he turned 7. Like, the movie constantly foreshadows that's gonna come back. It just very slowly butterflies up to that effect, and I think it kind of worked. Don't get me wrong, the actual time travel in this movie is riddled with fucking egregious plot holes and just kind of tells you to not think about most of the stuff that happens after the halfway point. There is a scene where they go watch Imagine Dragons, and it's awesome. I still think about this scene sometimes. I don't know why. My brain just works like that. I'm not diagnosed on the spectrum, but I sure as hell think I'm on it. So if the movie had the chemistry of Chronicle, at least to an extent, and a kind of interesting, hooky story, then what was wrong with the movie? Well, about everything else. The characters here are a lot more than they were in Chronicle. In Chronicle, you get to kind of focus on these 3 guys just dicking around, talking, and having their own individual arcs. Project Almanac decided to instead live this up to 5 characters who have semi-arcs. The only real one that ever gets explored is David's, and on top of that, David's arc is kind of lame after a point. Instead of just being able to talk to a girl and make things right and, learning from his mistakes like a normal human being, he fucks with the time-space continuum because he didn't say hey. And for some reason, him doing that leads to this entire other world where everything went dog shit and everyone died. Which the movie tries to explain. Poorly, but not the point. Overall, despite the chemistry, the characters don't have the same level of growth that they did in Chronicle. Yes, seeing them dick around for a bit is fun, and seeing the like small little plots of each of them develop is unique, it doesn't really feel the same. It feels more like it was forced development than actual development. A lot of the characters in the movie don't even really do shit, they're just there. Visual set dressing, if you will. I don't know what other type of set dressing there is. Why'd I say visual? What the fuck is wrong with me? And it would be better too if the actual plot made sense, but it really doesn't. It feels really stupid, and unlike Chronicle, where the cautionary tale is something that feels more relevant and, you know, sincere, Project Almanac just seems selfish and kinda goofy in retrospect. Like, yeah, say what you want about the dude at the end of Chronicle, he killed quite a few people probably. David killed like 150 people on a plane, and then refused to go back and fix the thing that he fucked up originally, instead trying to subvert the situation. Holy shit, dude. Another thing that makes the movie critically kinda collapse on its own interior is, while it might seem like the same movie as Chronicle, it kinda doesn't have nearly the amount of fun shit happening. Don't get me wrong, there are some scenes that I really do enjoy, them winning the lottery, but winning it wrong because they fucked up one of the numbers, and then all of them looking at the screen as they won $1 million but could have won like 100 billion or some shit. It was a really funny scene. But like overall, they don't really do anything that's kinda stand out or fun or amazing. In Chronicle, when you see these guys mess around with their powers and then see it go wrong and then see them set ground rules that get broken, it feels like something interesting, you know, cool. Holy shit, they're flying, they're moving BMWs around a parking lot, they're fighting and doing cool shit. In Project Almanac, it's just, oh, they're huddling together, a bunch of static happens, and then they're suddenly at a different time. I mean, I guess that is what time travel is, but still, it's not as visually appealing. Now, to get into my next point, I need to explain something that I think is pretty important in any literature or just movies in general. Whenever you as an artist are inspired by something to create your own thing, that has to be inspiration and not straight up copying. Having too great an admiration for one piece of work will make you want to include as much of, you know, its elements in your elements as you possibly can, and that can lead to some complications later down the line. It's a very thin, veiled line that can easily be overstepped, where something can just look like inspiration, but then can turn into copying if you accidentally, you know, do it a little bit too hard. A lot of elements from Chronicle are very much copy-pasted kind of over in Project Almanac in retrospect. I mean, the rules that they set down not to be broken, only for one of the characters to go haywire and break the rules, which leads to the climax of the movie. The message of having power and not abusing it or letting it go to your head, because sometimes you can't change everything. The teenagers sticking around with, you know, sci-fi bullshit, even if the sci-fi bullshit is kind of not the point of the entire movie. But at the end of the day, I genuinely don't think Project Almanac is copying Chronicle. I rather just think it's kind of a thing that came down to the studios. Chronicle succeeded and the execs wanted a new movie that could fill that gap. But by using the format of found footage within itself, it kind of leads to these overlaps being inevitable. Found footage means that there isn't really a plot structure, and if there is, it has to pretty rigidly follow things are alright, something happens, thing go bad. And that's kind of what happens in both these movies. I think that the execs wanted a movie that was very similar to Chronicle and could cash in that same hype, and then the people who made it kind of decided that while they were still going to do that because that's their job, they were going to try and put their own unique twist on it. I don't think there was no passion behind Project Almanac. I genuinely think there's some heart behind the movie, and how even if its message is a really stupid and simple one, I think the idea of not having second chances is an important message to tell, and the movie does enough to, you know, individualize itself to the point where I'd say it's not really copying it, but it also kind of is. It's like a happy medium between what the directors wanted for the movie and what the execs wanted the movie to be. And I think they did a good job with what they were able to do. I don't know, don't quote me. At the end of the day, I'm not really someone who knows about the behind the scenes of the movie or how strict they had to follow a certain format or if they had to rewrite or any of that. I haven't really done a lot of research for this movie, I'm gonna be real for you. All I do know is that Project Almanac bombed. Heavily. Now, throughout my review of especially Almanac, you'd think that I was pretty critical of the movie and that I didn't enjoy it, but that's actually kind of false. I found myself enjoying Almanac quite a lot, like, it genuinely still holds a special place in my heart, and even upon a rewatch, it wasn't nearly that bad. I'd give it a solid 7 or even 6.5 out of 10. Yeah, the plot holes are pretty fucking egregious, and the copying elements from Chronicle definitely is a little bit more blatant when you watch the movies back to back, but despite all the issues that Almanac can possibly have, I think it's still kind of a fun movie to watch at the very least. So the real question is, why didn't people think that in 2015? And folks, this is where the disappointing part of the video comes in. I don't really know. You should subscribe to me. I'm so talented. I'm so good at making videos. I've racked my brain for a solid, week since I decided to make this video on why Project Almanac didn't see the same amount of success that Chronicle did, and I genuinely can't think of one solid, concrete reason. It's more like a war, you know? Archduke Ferdinand might have been the cause of World War II if you look at it from a historian's perspective, but if you look deeper, there were a lot of shits before that, and I just don't think that there's one concrete reason for why this movie bombed over Chronicle. Maybe it was just that the times had changed, and in those 3 years, the entire idea of this novel little found-footage sci-fi concept had completely lost all novelty and turned into boring and lame. Hell, maybe it just had something to do with the fact that the cast wasn't, Michael B. Jordan this time around. Maybe it even has to do with the marketing. Maybe the movie wasn't marketed as well, or maybe some early reviews that at the time were received more negatively just had the movie seem not worth a watch. I don't know. At the end of the day, I still think Project Almanac is a pretty fair movie that time kind of sadly forgot. It's not a masterpiece, and it's not like it's the first thing I'd recommend to someone who hasn't seen a found footage movie, but it's still a movie I'll turn on in the background while editing a video or something just because I feel nostalgic for it. Maybe that's just me, biased and whatever, but I genuinely don't think this movie's all that bad. I just think it was a product of not corporate greed per se, but just corporate demand. Fucking voice crack louder than the goddamn glaciers. Overall, I still like both these movies, and despite the way Project Almanac ended up, kind of bombing and making it so that no more found footage experimental movies would ever come out, I still kind of want them to. If nothing else, this video can just be kind of my way of petitioning for movies of the found footage nature to come out that aren't exclusively horror. Don't get me wrong, I love that shit. That shit's my bread and butter. Blair Witch is my second favorite horror movie of all time, but there's so much more potential with this genre. You gotta give it a little bit of a shot, guy. Project Almanac has never been talked about again by any of the directors or cast or whatever. No one really cared after this movie bombed. They were just kind of quietly sulking in the shadows until it disappeared without anyone really making too big of a fuss about it. Meanwhile, Chronicle was actually supposed to get a sequel. To this day, it hasn't been cancelled, and a lot of the people behind the original talked about how there were many plans and confirmations for a sequel, but it seems to have gone into the Cloverfield territory, in a way. Honestly, I'm kind of happier for that having been the case, because reading the rough read-throughs of what the movie was supposed to be about, with a female-led cast going into fake news, it sounds kinda timely but boring. But I don't know, who knows, maybe I'm proven wrong and in 4 years we get a fucking AI hypocrisy movie. Anyway, sorry for this video taking so long. I really did intend on making a few more videos down the line, but I got sidetracked. I don't really think too many people care. I don't have concurrent viewers or anything, but for anyone who was wondering, I am fine. I will continue to upload very rarely when I can, and I'm gonna try and upload a little bit more if I, get the time to. Life's been hectic. Regardless, if you don't know who I am, I'm new to this site, biatches. Okay, well, not really, but I'm new to the entire YouTube thing. I've been dabbling in it as a hobby, and I don't know, I make videos about shit I like, which is a lot of stuff. If you think you enjoyed this video, leave a like. You don't gotta subscribe, but it would be cool if you wanted to. I'll probably make more videos about movies like this in the future. Maybe. Why are you still here? But no, genuinely, thanks for watching, and see you all in the next one, which will hopefully still be this year. Go watch Chronicle or something, I don't know.